Blair are one of the most popular bands to date. Starting in 1989, the band was most popular for their music, which told stories about British life and traditional values.
Oasis grew up in a council estate in Manchester. The difference between these two bands was one was a middle class background, one was a working class background, and it really resonated in both music.
Because of Blair's more middle class upbringing, they were often made fun of, especially by Oasis during their rise, for being more of a phony band, because their music was so focused on lower class lives within Britain, whereas they themselves were all musicians who were very middle class and very well educated.
This is very true, and Liam and Noel have actually come out and said this about Blair many of times, the fact that their music, they tried to resonate with the working class at times, but it never worked because they were not working class people. You look at middle class backgrounds, all went to the best universities in the country, whereas Oasis were definitionally a working class people. Council estate people that grew up in Manchester, you can't get any more working class than that.
Yeah, like literally working on construction sites, like as a past career, and then going into musicians. That's a far more relatable upbringing for most people within Britain. I feel like that really helped with their rise to fame and their relatability.
Yes, exactly. Like, you can't go too far into depths about them as people though, based on their economic background, because Noel and Liam were completely different human beings. You had Noel. Noel was a musician. He was quiet. He liked to smoke weed. He liked to listen to music. He was music orientated. Whereas Liam's love of music came a lot later on. Liam's love of music came from the fact that he was a joker. He liked to play games. He liked to have a laugh. A person from a rival school showed up one day, hit him over the head with a hammer, and what he says, you can never be sure with Liam if it's true or not. But he said after being hit on the head with a hammer, that was where he found his love of music. What do you think? Do you think it's true or not?
Is that just a story that he's told, like in interviews and stuff? Yeah.
He's telling the same story for years.
I feel like there probably is some partial truth to that. I think that's very bizarre though, for that to be the reason for someone to get into music. It's a very bizarre story.
You'd imagine it'd be the opposite way, wouldn't you? You'd imagine you get hit in the head with a hammer, you wouldn't like music anymore,
you
know?
would lose interest in something rather than discovering a new passion.
Yeah.
But I guess at the same time with him, you can never truly be sure with his stories though, can you?
No, we'll get on to that later with different secrets that he kept. I think it's also interesting to say about how the band originated. Oasis was in 1991, as I've already said, but within that year, Noel had just been kicked from a band. Liam had just started in a band. He was a roadie for the Inspiral Carpets, a band that was actually went on a lot longer before, well, when they were in their childhood. They had a poster of Inspiral Carpets on their wall. One day, Noel's on the phone with his mum. Noel's mum goes, Liam's in a band now. Noel goes, what do you mean he's in a band? Oh, he's the lead singer. And he goes, Liam, a lead singer? How's that possible? Because it was just something that Liam was never... He had an interest in music, but he was never musically orientated.
Yeah, that was never something he wanted to do.
And Noel never saw him as someone who could sing. Because he didn't sing out in public. He was more this macho bravado. You know, he would never be someone to go straight up, just be singing in the shower or something, you know?
Yeah.
He was never a shower singer. You look at so he goes down, he goes to watch the Inspiral Carpets. All of a sudden, Noel is now sitting in on the band performances, their practices, their gigs. He's sitting in all of it. And all of a sudden, he's starting to have more and more to do with this band. They go on tour, they roadie together. All of a sudden, then Liam and Noel party too hard. Basically, is what's said. They're partying too hard. What you'd expect from Oasis.
Yeah, that seems like a very Oasis thing, to be fair.
Yeah, they party too hard. They've both been fired. What do you do from there? They form one of the greatest British bands in history.
As you casually do.
Yeah. So how did Blair originate?
I think compared to Oasis, Blair was a lot more easygoing with their beginning. I think they all kind of knew each other from school, and they all kind of had this similar interest in music until they just decided to form a band. And I think it was only after like 2 or 3 shows they did at like local venues where they got signed by a record label, and well, from there the rest was pretty much history.
Brilliant. So, the first encounter. So it's one of those things with the first encounter. Different stories, different reasons for why the hatred built for each other. Well, within hatred, you could say it was hatred, or you could say it was very good marketing. But there was definitely times in which both bands did lash out at each other in a way that wouldn't be seen as something you would do if you weren't actually vexed by the situation or too caught up in your own drama, you know?
Yeah, of course.
So Graham Coxon, he's in the Good Mixer pub in Lancashire. He's sitting in the pub, he's just having a pint. Who does he meet?
Who does he meet?
Liam and Noel Gallagher. Liam and Noel Gallagher just formed Oasis. They walk into the pub. Liam introduces himself. We're Oasis, newly formed band. He turns on to Graham Coxon. They have a casual conversation. All of a sudden, Liam does what Liam does. He starts making fun of Graham Coxon's clothes. Graham Coxon doesn't really respond. He isn't too fussed. But then all of a sudden Liam turns around to Graham and he goes, "Cockney, cockney, c***s." That is what he said. That was the quote that's been used years and years on. Both boys get kicked out of the pub, and that is the beginning of the feud between Oasis and Blur.
I feel like that's a very textbook example of the people behind Blur and the people behind Oasis, though, and how they truly are. You know, Blur, they're always kind of joking around with it a bit. They never really took the feud all that seriously, whereas Oasis clearly hated Blur very early on.
You have to look though. It's the 90s. It's the 90s in England. It's all about the working class and the middle class. Working class and the middle class, especially at that time, it was one of those things. There was definitely a stigma around both. The working class always trying to get the upper hand on the middle class, while the middle class we trying to do the same to the working class. It's just one of those things. I think the middle class would have done it a little bit less, a bit more discreetly, because they had the economic funds, whereas the working class people had to grind and work for what they had. You know. It was more about, it's just what it is, isn't it? It's just how it works.
And then during acceptance speeches at the same time, they would make fun of the crowd for how much richer they are than everyone there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what it is. They worked for it, didn't they? They wanted to flaunt it. After that, both bands went on to certain levels of commercial success. Blur stay in the bigger band, Oasis falling on quite nicely afterwards. But then I think it's quite important to talk about 1995. Would you want to talk about 1995 and what happened?
Another very clear-cut example of the differences in people here is a very classic example during the Brit Awards. Blur obviously walked away with 4 awards versus Oasis's 1, which made it very apparent at the time that Blur were much further ahead than Oasis. You know, there wasn't really much of a competition at the time.
You could almost say 4 times bigger, couldn't you?
In a way, yes. The math does checks out.
And if I'm right to say, Oasis that year walked away with newest upcoming award.
Best upcoming band, I believe.
Best upcoming band. Ah, I see.
I think during the awards, Blur were a little bit kind of embarrassed almost by winning that many, because they didn't really, they were never really, despite being the biggest band, they were never really ones to show off and kind of like flaunt that.
They were chivalrous in victory.
Yeah, they were very kind of, they felt like there should have been more variety in the awards, which is very admirable in a way. When they mentioned Oasis by name on stage, I feel like even though it was meant as like a light-hearted thing and like a sign of respect, you could tell Oasis definitely did not like that. So to them, that would have felt like a rubbing it in their face kind of thing.
I don't know if it's understandable, really. When you look at it, you think someone's gone up on stage, said you deserve to win some of these awards. Personally, you'd think, they're being admirable, respectful. They're not going, oh, the people, so many people. We'll get to that later. Anyway, I think another big thing to mention was the 2 albums that were released that year, which they were being judged on at the Brit Awards. Maybe just to mention what they were.
Obviously, Oasis released Definitely Maybe that year as their debut album, which was going against Blur with Park Life, which I think, looking at this from more of a Blur fan, is very interesting this year, that this was the year that everyone points to as Blur winning by a mile. Because, if anything, looking at these 2 albums, I would honestly say Park Life is one of their much more weaker ones. Even though it was probably their most popular album in terms of sales, it definitely wasn't their most high quality one.
It's that one song though, innit?
Yeah, that's all you really need. It's just that one song to get in the charts, and that just...
Yeah. But obviously, Oasis had that one song as well. They had, obviously, Supersonic.
Yeah, Supersonic was quite a big hit. I don't think, at the time, nowhere near as big as Park Life, though.
No.
That was much bigger.
You start to feel Liam's disdain against Blur hit a boiling point. Noel at this point, he's quite cool with it. He's just enjoying it. He's on the ride. He's enjoying the success. He isn't too fussed between the 2.
Yeah, Noel was more in this vein of kind of Blur in a sense, but he just kind of found it funny. He didn't really care that much. Like, he cared a little bit because of his brother, but I feel like it was definitely Liam that was very passionate towards the hatred and the feud of it all.
Definitely. Then obviously it became a little bit different, didn't it? Oasis had a #1 single, an after party was formed. At that after party, Damon went to congratulate Liam. Liam Gallagher turns around to Damon and goes, number fucking one, number fucking one.
I think just another clear-cut example of Liam being a bit of a knob sometimes. I feel like this was definitely the breaking point for Damon as well. Damon Albarn definitely, from this point on, felt a need to kind of one-up Oasis, which kind of changed the directions for both bands going forward, because it was much more of a direct competition here, where they both wanted to one-up each other.
Definitely. And this all came true in August of 1995, the 14th. Both bands both released a single on the same day, Roll With It and Country House.
Yeah, originally Country House was going to release a week after, because they announced it first, but then when Oasis announced they were releasing their song a week before, they felt like they couldn't give Oasis the edge in order to try and beat them in terms of sales, because obviously if it comes out quicker there's more time. So Blair decided to make the decision to push it back, well, bring it forward a week and release it a week early, so that way both singles were directly competing with each other in a popularity contest.
100%. And then you have organisations such as the NME. They have a magazine that came out, I think it was every month. NME came out every month? Every month.
God knows.
NME came out every month, and basically they branded it the Battle of the Britpops. One side you had Blue, one side you had Oasis, and it was all built around which single was going to be better and which single was going to be number one, because people knew one of these singles were going to be number one. The hype built around this was incredible. Roll With It released with commercial success. They had distribution errors with barcode scanners in factories. They had to replace lots of barcodes. It was like 40,000 barcodes had to be changed. And at the time they just weren't as known as Blur.
I feel like at this point though, Blair were more of the underdog in this situation. I feel like a lot of people expected Oasis to beat them out.
The whole media at this point were against Oasis. In 1995, when these two songs were released, Blur were 4 times as big. Oasis were a big band, but like as you've seen, due to the Brits, Blur was releasing the music people knew, resonated with them. They knew who Blur were.
Yeah, it was
Oasis
more of a known thing.
It was more of a known thing.
So after the two songs released on the exact same day and competed with each other head on, it was actually Blur who still managed at this point to come out on top and beat Oasis with their single Country House.
Yeah, which was kind of expected, really. At that point, I would say neither single were their best singles.
I feel like there was a lot of compromises made from both just trying to get the numbers game. That there was a lack of focus on the music at this point, definitely, which led to a lot of disappointment with the final results.
Well, look at Graham Coxon. What did he do?
During the live performance, people noted that Graham Coxon, whilst playing the song, seemed very off. You know, he wasn't having as much fun as everyone else. And then later on that same night, he was so embarrassed to have released a single like this that he even went as far as to contemplate suicide.
But releasing singles on the same day wasn't the only thing that they were doing together. After this, they started doing concerts on the same night in the same city, which after a while, because of the animosity between both fan groups, because there were massive fan bases to these two big bands, there started to be what you would call a pop gang war in the streets. People were getting hurt, which then came to both bands saying, we're going to withdraw from doing our gig on the same night so no fans get hurt. I think it was Noel Gallagher said something like, we're going to cancel our gig so one of your fans don't get punched in the face or something like that. Oasis did retract their gig, but Blur didn't, and Blur went on to then mock Oasis within that gig, even after saying they would do the same themselves. This is the point in which Noel Gallagher lost his cool. Noel Gallagher went on to say that lead singer Damon Albarn and Graham Coxon should both get AIDS and die.
Like turning to someone now and saying, get AIDS and die.
At the time though, obviously AIDS was a lot... not saying AIDS isn't important now, but...
Much more of a controversial topic back in the 90s, mid-90s.
Yeah. This then sprung an apology out of Noel Gallagher coming to the end of the year after a year of defeat against Blur, which then culminated of him having to apologise to Blur, saying he doesn't want them to die, and saying that he hopes them good health, which I bet was an absolute stinger for him.
Probably, I would imagine so. I feel like Blur were definitely a lot more subtle with their jabs towards Oasis though. Like, for example, one thing Blur did was they would wear Oasis merchandise up on stage as they were performing their own music.
And they also, like, they were planning on having a blimp going across where Oasis had a concert with the word blue on it in order to antagonize them, basically. Stuff, little things like that, like not necessarily saying terrible things about each other, more just showing visuals which could be seen as amusing. I don't see how anything that really they did. I think it was all more of just like childish fun, more less than what Oasis were when they've been act brashly.
Yeah, whereas Oasis's main approach was things like when Liam would go on interviews and talk about how much he was in love with Damon Albarn's girlfriend at the time. Just pure spite.
There is something else as well. Do you know what the secret reason why David Albarn and Liam Gallagher didn't get on?
Well, that's what we've been talking about for the past
secret reason.
30 minutes.
The secret reason.
The secret reason. What is the secret reason then, Brian?
Well, the secret reason was apparently, allegedly, this came out later on, was apparently David Alba slept with Liam's girlfriend, who was also said to have been the mother of his child.
Has anyone besides Liam confirmed that?
Well, Liam said basically himself, he alluded to the point. But when David Alba laughed, he said, we were young, we were childish. He went along with it. Where Liam came out then and said it was not true. But what was said in the quote, that they were all shagging the same beard, there's a lot of cocaine involved at the time.
Yeah.
And as we know, Liam has got a very, very, very forgetful memory. Like, he'll remember things differently to what they happened. He was one of these people, you know? Well, I think I'm one of those people as well, but I think you'd agree.
Definitely, maybe.
1996 saw the turn of the tides, though. You saw Oasis becoming the juggernaut that they are now known as today. You saw Blur kind of evolve into... they had Song 2 released, didn't they? But
yeah, Song 2... Even though I would agree that Oasis did go on to become, especially in Britain, a much more popular band overall, Song 2, released by Blur, was far more popular than anything else either of the bands had done. So it is a bit of
Wonderwall.
Maybe in Britain. In Britain, Wonderwall was huge, yes. But with Song 2, you've got to think about the American audiences as well, which that song really resonated with, which is ironic because Blur always kind of had an issue with trying to break into America. I mean, Oasis did as well. But Song 2 is the one time either of those bands managed to break America, and it's criticised with being the least Blur sounding song that they've ever released. Because, did you know, originally it was never meant to be released. You know, Song 2, when Blur created Song 2, they had no intention of actually releasing it on an album. They made it as a joke.
Well, Oasis didn't exactly flop in America. They just didn't become the godlike figures that they are in the UK.
They were both British bands.
Yes.
That's where their audiences resided, and only Song 2 had a separate audience in America.
There was a commercial success in Oasis in America. It just wasn't to the levels of godlike status they had in the UK.
Yeah.
Like, whereas Blur had
nowhere near as iconic.
No. Blur was Song 2. I will fully admit, they broke America.
So between Blur and Oasis, I think it's fair to say they both had their points of ups and downs in terms of popularity, but overall, I would say Blur made the better music overall.
I would agree. I would say a lot of Oasis' music was just gibberish, but it resonated with people.
Oasis made music for the common man within Britain, whereas Blur tried to focus more on writing music about that same audience.
Like when Liam Gallagher sings about a Wonderwall, what does that mean?
Yeah, what the hell is that?
No one knows, but people go crazy for it.
Yeah, that's like one of the most iconic songs in Britain. It just sticks with people because that's what they did.
Whereas when Blur sings about living in a country house, people understand that. They know what they're saying, you know?
Yeah, it's got like a narrative to it.
And the middle class people talking about living in a country house, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? It's one of those things. It was more meaning towards what Blur said. But does that necessarily mean they're better? Or
yes.
You think yes?
Yeah, I think it does, honestly. I think nonsensical lyrics and the toned down sort of basic chord progression that Oasis had to stick with kind of limited their creative potential and the quality of their albums as a whole.
Well, yes. Like we've already established, you could argue with that. Songs like Wonderwall, songs like Supersonic, they were all random gibberish that just resonated with people. If a song resonates with someone in a way that makes people feel happy and enjoy themselves, does that mean more than... Well, clearly it did mean more. Clearly it means more than something that was well thought out and made sense. People obviously resonated more with Oasis, their popularity, their success. If you asked a common person if they could name 5 Blur songs, they'd have an issue. You ask them, you ask a common person, can they name 5 Oasis songs? No problem at all. No problem at all.
Another good point would be longevity, though. I feel like Oasis lived and died in the 90s. Their last well-known album was in like 2002, and even then it wasn't very well received. Whereas Blur, one of their best albums and most popular albums, came out in 2015. And if you look at on Spotify, if you look at the top 10 most popular Blur songs of all time, I think it's like number 8 or number 9
Oasis
is from 2015.
Oasis's longevity didn't come down to the fact that they died and faded into irrelevancy. It came down due to arguments within the band.
Yeah, not failing due to irrelevancy, but more so of just not being able to keep it up. Whereas lead singer Damon Albarn has so many more projects that he kept going over the years. Like, obviously Gorillaz was far more popular than either two bands by miles.
Noel Gallagher's and the Flying Birds, much more popular than that. Much more popular than Liam's band. But they were, weren't they?
Were they?
The Gorillaz is obviously more popular than Noel Gallagher and the Flying Birds.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And having that more consistent workflow and continuing on with his musical career, I think it's far more easier for Blur to just kind of have that revival and come back. You know, after all those years, they're still together. You know, they're on tour this year doing live concerts. Whereas if you look at Oasis, the two brothers don't even talk to each other anymore.
Well, they formed two different bands, haven't they?
Yeah, they haven't spoken to each other in years, and they're brothers. Whereas Blur are out here doing like a world tour together.
The crazy thing is that David Alba and Noel Gallagher have actually sorted their problems up and performed together.
Yeah, they've made music together.
Whereas the two brothers don't even speak.
Yeah.
I think they might respond to each other through other people, through like Twitter and stuff. Liam spouting off his usual random garbage.
Yeah.
But other than that,
the two rivals of the 90s are now more closer with each other than the two brothers.
We got the power to be loving each other no matter what happens. We got the power to do that.